Hey, so if you've been considering where you're going to retire, I personally have chosen Florida, and a lot of people seem to be interested in Florida. It was originally one of the retirement meccas, I would say, between Florida and Arizona, kind of depending on what kind of heat you liked. Arizona is known for its dry heat, obviously. Florida is known for humidity. But during the fall, winter, early spring months, Florida's pretty great temperatures, and it's not super hot, super humid every day. Matter of fact, this year they even got snow a couple of different times. So today I want to talk about real quick the retiring early in Florida and what the pros and cons are. Whether it's actually early or not is up to you. But the pros and cons of retiring in Florida. So some of the things you got to consider is that Florida is known because of the warm weather and the beaches and the active lifestyle. So there's a lot of great, amazing things about Florida. And it's otherwise known as a pretty reasonable, low cost of living, depending on where you go and depending on whether you buy or rent and have to pay the higher insurance for your house, etc. But those are things that can be worked with, and a lot of it depends on where you live, what part of Florida, because there's, you got the coastals on both coasts. You got the southern coast, which would be the Keys and, down southern Florida around Punta Gorda and Fort Myers, and then it works its way down to the Keys, up over to Miami, and then you're back up the Atlantic coast. And then, of course, there's the Panhandle coast, which is, the Gulf. It's a Gulf coast, but it's up on the northern side of the Gulf, and you got different waters. The beaches are pretty white, sandy up there, but their waters are more clear, very coral, blue, beautiful water up there. So where you retire at does make a difference, because it also, there's a lot of inland areas that are very cost effective to live and rent at. So things to consider is location. So, obviously if you consider, living in a not so well-known area in Florida, like Central Florida, but not Orlando, maybe Ocala, some of those other areas, your expenses are going to be a whole lot different than if you live in Miami or even Pensacola or Jacksonville. Jacksonville's pretty moderate and pretty modest living expenses. The other thing that you have to consider when it comes to that is the healthcare expenses and the insurance costs. For retirees, you average somewhere around $277 a month for the supplemental insurance to go with Medicare, which isn't too bad overall. But what's great is that there is lots of access to good medical health care down there, because literally hospitals, emergency rooms, and clinics are almost like a Starbucks or McDonald's anywhere else. They're on literally every corner, or at least it seems like it. All right, so the next thing you can consider is lifestyle and culture. And I can tell you that, it's a very diverse areas in Florida. There's a lot of immigrants and Cuban influence, and a lot of lots of those kinds. And the diversity depends on if you've got city life, beach towns, if you want to live in the coastal communities, like I said, the north-south areas. We have friends and family down in Florida that actually have horses. They live in a regular house, but they keep a horse at a local ranch, and they have horses and compete. So with their horse, their daughter does. It's pretty cool, the diversity of lifestyles that are available as well. And then, of course, the great thing about having great weather all year is that they have a very active lifestyles to work with. You have golfing, you have boating, you have outdoor activities, you have trails, you have kayaking. There's all kinds of springs. And of course, now be careful of the gators, because I just saw a stat the other day on Instagram that's mentioned that there's like 1.3 million gators estimated in the Florida region, and like only 10,000 fresh bodies of water, which puts like 178 gators in every body of water. But if there's fresh water, there are alligators. That's something you have to remember. So it doesn't mean you can't swim and ski and all that kind of thing. That's a personal choice. I personally don't choose to do that. I'll be honest with you. But one of the other great things about the Florida region is, because the climate's so good, there are literally things going on every weekend. Festivals of every sort in every community of all kinds every weekend. In Tampa area alone, Tampa St. Pete area where we frequent, there is literally a festival of some kind going on every weekend between St. Pete and Tampa and the Clearwater area, and all the surrounding areas. There are state fairs and things going on at the state fairgrounds, which are right outside Tampa area. So there's always something to do besides going over to Orlando to the theme parks. But they also have a lot of conventions and things like that in Orlando as well. And Orlando's really just kind of going to get busier with Epic Universe opening next month down in Orlando for Universal Studios. So the crowds are going to be big and it's going to be busy, but that's part of the growth and that's part of what makes Florida great too. Now, I'm not going to pretend that Florida is all roses either. There are some downsides. First and foremost, of course, is weather. You have to consider the hurricanes, and if you're willing to tolerate them. If you are 30 to 50 miles off of the coast, either coast, you're typically not going to get hit near as badly as somebody that's on the coast for hurricanes. If you're out of the flood zones and evacuation areas, whether you evacuate or not is still a personal choice, but there's some areas down there where they make it mandatory evacuation. If you're out of those areas and out of flood zones, your property, if you own, is not going to get near the damage that it will get if you're in that 30 to 50 miles off just inside of the coastline, because that's where most of the storm surges come in and the flooding is worse in the low-lying areas. So you want to do some research when you're going to look to buy, if you're going to buy, and if you are going to rent in those areas. If you want to rent an apartment, I would suggest going up to the second floor. That at least keeps you from getting flood damage if you're going to be coastal and closer to the water. And that's what we would do. If I was going to live any closer to the water, we would go up a floor and rent on the second floor instead of the first floor. But we're in an area that's been safe. We lost power this year during all three of the hurricanes that came within that 6-week period or so. But my wife and daughter survived and did just fine down there. They had no damage really to the property. Milton gave some property damage as far as fences, a couple trees, that kind of thing, but nothing to the actual property themselves, the buildings and the units and the electricity, aside from the power going out. All the lines were there. And what's great about a lot of the areas where they build in Florida is that they put everything underground so you don't have to worry about storms knocking the power out in your area. But the power can still go out. So there's nothing you can do a lot to protect yourself from that other than prepare. If you own your property, get a generator and have storm shutters to put up to protect your glass, etc. All right, the next thing I like to talk about with this is that the cons of Florida is the traffic. Oh my gosh, I'm serious. I've never seen such horrible drivers in my entire life. And I'm not saying that I'm a great driver, perfect driver, but it is crazy driving down there and people are in a hurry to go everywhere. If you see somebody using their turn signal, they are probably either a tourist or they just moved and they haven't learned to turn that off. It's just typically not done. And of course, almost every intersection you can do a U-turn. And that's because they build, most of the roads have medians and then you can't just cross over. And the turn lanes get backed up. It's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. So the rule of thumb is that if it's 10 miles away, you double the mileage and that's how many minutes it's gonna take on minimum average. If you're going into any of the congested areas that are busy, Tampa, St. Pete, for instance, if you're taking the death road of I-4 into Orlando or out of Orlando, it is going to take you forever. That road is crazy bad. If you're taking 75 south of Tampa, going towards Sarasota, between Tampa and Sarasota, just south of there, the traffic is crazy. Each direction, because people are going to the popular beaches down there, which is Siesta Key, Longboat Key, St. Armand's Circle to go into the drive, the shopping areas, Lido Key, Lido Beach, and Anna Maria Island. Very popular, very busy all the time. So the traffic that direction is going to be crazy horrible. And just you have to bear with it and keep it in mind. And if you want a beach day and you live in Florida, you plan early and you go early. Anyway, so you just got to plan better for it. If you're going to go over to the parks from where we go, it's a hour and 20-minute drive, but busy days with traffic, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours. So if we plan to go over to Orlando, we just make sure we get up early and we leave early so we can get there at a decent time to beat some of the traffic. Same thing goes with the beach. And we found some beaches where the locals go that we have found since we've become locals. And it's not near as busy and it's not near as bad. But the traffic between is still going to be there. So you gotta keep that into consideration. But when it comes right down to it, the best thing to do if you are considering Florida is to do some research. Maybe to work with a realtor if you look to buy, or to somebody that does those kinds of things. And I would also, if you're going to rent or you're looking for places to rent, whether it's a condo or an apartment, whatever, use rent.com or apartments.com. We have found our place using it, using those two services. We are currently looking at some other ones to possibly move again to get closer to where we actually want to be in the long run. So we are using those resources, and that's one of the best ways to find them. And then consider what kind of a climate, what kind of, if you want to live in a tourist area, if you want to if you want to live in a beach area, but not the crazy tourist beach areas. All those things do come into play. And you could always be a snowbird. That's how Florida and Arizona became popular to begin with, is that people could afford to buy second properties down there and vacation property down there, and then drive back and forth or fly back and forth and only use it during the off season. Now, it's still busy, but it's not tourist season busy. So anyway, a couple things to keep in mind if you are considering to retire into Florida. Some pros and cons, everything in moderation, and make sure you at least consider these options. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.